Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dill, the hottest name in college football as it pertains to the transfer portal is not even currently in the transfer portal right now. Washington State quarterback John Mateer, there's a lot of buzz. And there's a lot of buzz around two programs, the Miami Hurricanes, the Oklahoma Sooners. And Dill, you kind of get the feeling that both of these teams, they're very quiet in the transfer portal, especially at the quarterback front, because they're waiting for that John Mateer name to hit into the transfer portal. Want to get into two different things. One, let's talk about the pros and cons for both of these programs. And if you're John Mateer, where do you go? And then talk about what John Mateer brings to an offense. I've been very vocal that I don't think the quarterback crop in this year's transfer portal cycle contains a Cam Ward kind of guy. And what I mean by that is a Heisman Trophy caliber quarterback. I don't see a quarterback in the portal that kind of jumps out to me. If John Mateer enters the transfer portal, he's that guy, for me at least. And I'll be the first one to admit, in the falls, I'm not staying up to 11 p.m. Eastern time watching a ton of Washington State football, but I've gone back the last couple of weeks and watched this kid. He's dynamic. I think he's immediately one of, the better quarterbacks that you see in the country going into 2025. I'm fired up to get into this one. Before we do, and as always, to the Miami fans, to the Oklahoma fans, I'm sure both listening to this one, would love to hear from y'all in the comment section. This is going to be a very fun name to track if, in fact, he does enter the portal. Appreciate y'all rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Dill, without further ado, I'll start with this. I would be surprised if John Mateer does not enter the transfer portal. And I think it'd be a really cool story if he stayed at Washington State, kind of loyal to the soil type of thing. This was a program that gave him a shot when not a lot of programs were out of high school. The opportunities that he's going to have if he does enter the transfer portal, I personally feel like it just makes too much sense. I expect to see his name enter at some point. Dill, we all know you're not a phenomenal athlete. You don't have a rocket arm. I've seen it firsthand. But if you were that guy and you were John Mateer, and you enter the transfer portal, Miami, Oklahoma seem to be the two names that are getting the most amount of buzz. Where would you be taking your talents for the 2025 season?
My lean would have to be Miami right now. And It really does start with what's around that Miami offense, because you look like Oklahoma just didn't put a competitive offense on the field around either Michael Hawkins or Jackson Arnold. And I don't think really any quarterback would have had a great chance to really thrive. You obviously saw a polar opposite with Miami. You see that offensive line, how they can run the football. They have a lot of skilled players that you think are really good. So I just think Miami's infrastructure is right now better. And as much as the draw to Ben Arbuckle and the quarterback's coach from Washington State heading to Norman, I mean, that team, unless they get really active really quick in the portal, I just don't know if I'm John Mateer. Frankly, I'm thinking draft if I'm him. That's probably the first thing that pops my mind. I look at how complete of a quarterback is, good athlete, really just good, solid pocket passer as well. I'd be thinking, how am I going to
does not get nearly enough credit for how good of a passer. Sorry to interrupt you. I feel
like people think he's a gadget college guy. I look at the way he can read defenses and how he can spin it from the pocket. He should be thinking draft. And I just look, Miami right now, I think has a better offensive infrastructure to really thrive.
If you're John Mateer, you just saw the story play out for the last 12 months with Cam Ward. And Cam Ward went from being probably an early day 3 pick in the NFL draft to probably arguably the number one quarterback off the board. In my opinion, was the best quarterback in all of college football in 2024. That's very appealing. Now, you look at Oklahoma, you made a really good point. If Oklahoma wants to land John Mateer, they got to get active quick in the transfer portal. Because I think one of the things, I think John Mateer probably says, I want to follow Ben Arbuckle to Norman, Oklahoma, right? You want to stick with the guy that you're familiar with, and you know Oklahoma is going to recruit him hard. But if you're John Mateer, you look at that Oklahoma offense and say, one, the run game last year was atrocious. The pass protection was even worse. And then the pass catchers, they were all banged up, but then all the pass catchers are leaving into the portal. And so you look at that kind of what you were saying, that Oklahoma offense, if Oklahoma wants to land John Mateer, I think they got to get active over the next couple of days and weeks before.
And frankly, if you're shopping for wide receivers, that's probably the one position I think is really kind of ample opportunity, if you will. There's a lot of really big time difference makers at that spot. Now, the offensive line, much harder to address, obviously, and they have some young guys coming through the pipeline.
Agreed.
A guy like Michael Fasusi is ready early. That kind of changes some things because I do think Oklahoma's interior offensive line is solid. I
Yes.
have some major questions about what that tackle play is going to be, so it'll be very dependent on what. I mean, yeah, how quickly can you get a Fasusi and some of these other young guys on the field and ready to go? Because it's just not easy to build that through the portal. So I
It's
think the wideouts done. And if they can do that, I think they can put themselves in a competitive position against Miami. But as we stand today, Miami certainly has more to
and
offer.
you make a good point. Like NIL will play a role in this, just like it does any high-profile recruitment. But you're probably right. What John Mateer's thinking about a little bit more is, all right, where's the spot where I can really thrive, win a lot of football games on a big-time scale, and then go be a draft pick over the
Because
next year.
let's be honest. I
That's
mean, Oklahoma and Miami both probably have
they'll
comparable
be
infrastructure in terms of what they can offer him to do.
agreed.
So it's not. I don't see that as like a huge difference maker to
Yeah,
me. It's going to be how does he get to the NFL? Because I do think he's got that type of talent.
yeah,
As much as
and
maybe his outside traits don't scream at the size, some of those things, maybe the strength of the arm, but he's a really, really
yeah, I
good
don't,
pocket.
I don't like when I watch him. I'm like I think he could make it fine in the NFL. And if I was a GM, like I would take it because again, that there's that narrative that always like a running quarterback that won't translate to the NFL. Like I totally disagree with that. And we'll get into some of his numbers a little later on. It's kind of funny. We always talk about the chicken or the egg. Do you want to get the quarterback to attract the wide receivers? Do you want to get the wide receivers to attract the quarterback? Normally, it's get a quarterback. You can attract the pass catchers. If you're Oklahoma, you're kind of thinking the opposite. We got to go get some pass catchers, and we got to get that offense around him, and then we can go. Kind of like how it played out with Cam Ward last year, where Miami built very good offensive line, very good wide receiver room, and then that attracted Cam Ward to Miami. That's probably what you're trying to do if you're Oklahoma. Now, flipping it to Miami, it starts with you're on the phone or you're saying, hey, Cam Ward, you got to get on the phone with John Mateer and kind of talk to him about your experience over the last 12 months because it could not have worked out any better for Cam Ward unless it just had a little bit better of a defense. You'd be playing in the playoffs right now. But in terms of Cam Ward, it doesn't get any bigger of a hit. Shannon Dawson offense, you're probably selling that. And again, I think Miami has a little bit better of a offense around him right now than what you saw Oklahoma have. And so there's a lot of pulls to both of these programs, right? The coordinator and coach for Oklahoma, the talent and what Cam Ward just did for Miami. We'll see which one works. Getting into John Mateer, look, we got to talk about the player a little bit. One, what fascinates me is that he was a year one starter this year. Like he took over. He was a backup to Cam Ward the last 2 years. He comes over and to me, it starts with he's not a Dylan Gabriel. Like Dylan Gabriel, you kind of knew what you're going to get. Oregon knew they were getting a very solid quarterback at the back that fit their system. For John Mateer, you know you're getting a good quarterback, but he's going into year two as a starter. Like he could be even better than what he was in 2024. You look at some of the numbers, 3,000 passing yards, 29 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. Dylan, here's the kicker for me, 64% completion percentage, which is solid, but it's not great. With an average depth of target of 10.2 yards down the field, completes a high number of footballs, pushes the ball down the field, completes 40% of his footballs 20-plus yards down the field, so he can certainly access the deeper third. As a thrower of the football, I think John Mateer does not get nearly enough credit for what he brings to the table.
No, and even if you just look at like his ability to read defenses and throw with anticipation and throw into holes with defenses and throw accurate footballs, like I think the completeness of his game is much greater. And again, I do think like his highlight plays, a lot of it does come from using his athleticism, whether that's to extend plays, make plays with the ball in the air on the run, or whether it's just straight running for touchdowns. Like, yeah, those plays are certainly highlight reel plays. But you just look at how clean he is in the pocket and reading defenses and not putting the ball in harm's way too much. Like just a really, really good, clean
And
pocket quarterback. And again, the probably one downside is it doesn't seem like he has the biggest arm in the world, but he's just really savvy, smart quarterback in my mind.
to me, it's like the same conversation. Like people said that about Dylan Gabriel, and it's
Yeah.
good enough for John Mateer. It certainly was good enough for Dylan Gabriel as well. I mean, take a look at this. To me, I don't really get the arm strength. It seems so easy for him to generate velocity, especially attacking the deeper third. Again, muddy pocket, stepping up. That ball it just seems effortless. And it's going to be 35 yards dropped in a bucket. Like some of the throws that he can make, and what fascinates me about John Mateer is he can also rip it in there too. I mean, he can layer an attack in the deeper third, but if it's down in the red zone, and you talk about anticipation, like I'm going to throw you into this throwing window here. Perfect ball placement, doesn't get much better. The arm talent, I think, gets slept on. And then we obviously know what he can do as a runner of the football too. It doesn't take you that much resources to Google John Mateer on YouTube and just take a look at what he can do as an athlete. Dill, two things about him being an athlete. One, he had 37 carries this year of 10 plus yards. He had 54 missed tackles forced. Those are better numbers running the football than a lot of running backs. And he's 6'2", 220 pounds. Like, you can use him running the football. He's just as big as the linebackers that are trying to tackle him. And he also improves your run game. And we all know this. When you have a quarterback that can get it done with his own legs, it's going to open it up for the rest of the run game too. Washington State in 2023 only ran the football for 1,000 yards. They averaged 3.1 yards per carry. Enter John Mateer, over 2,000 yards, doubled their rushing yards, 4.8 yards per carry. And so he's a guy that not only can get it done by himself running the football, but he's going to open up the rushing attack for the other running backs too with some of that read option stuff, freezing backside edges and linebackers. To me, he checks off all the boxes, and just you immediately insert a quarterback that is so difficult for an opposing defense to try to deal with.
And that is one area where you think one really strong pull for Oklahoma is just how well Ben Arbuckle is able to use every skill set he had, whether it was in the passing game, whether it was in the running game, like the way they designed it around him. That is one thing you think like more immediate success possibility. You don't really need to I guess that continuity does matter to me because, again, you try to maximize the skill set he has. Ben Arbuckle, I think, can really do it. And Shannon Dawson, I don't necessarily doubt it, but they're not the same quarterbacks, him and Cam Ward. They play a bit of a different game. John Mateer is a far better athlete, obviously. So you look like that is the one thing, like, can you get the best out of him if you're Shannon Dawson and he ends up at Miami in the way that Ben Arbuckle did? Because, again, I thought the way they used him in the run game, whether it was design runs, whether it was quarterback reads with the running back, it was really, really brilliant how they schemed it up.
Yeah, and what he also does, he not only can scramble, but he extends plays so well and gets himself out. At times there's a little of that Cam Ward in him too, where you're saying, all right, we don't have to do everything, but when you're at Washington State, you kind of do have to be that guy. And everybody got on Cam Ward for the turnovers before he got to Miami. It's like, look, yeah, the turnovers, they were there at Washington State because he had to be the dude. Like, if Washington State was going to win football games, Cam Ward was going to have to be a superhuman. When he goes to Miami, he was still a superhero, but he didn't have to do everything, and he kind of towed that line between being a difference maker, taking care of the football. I think you could see a very similar step for John Mateer as well. When you go to a Miami offense or an Oklahoma offense, you don't have to be the guy that's making every single play on this offense. I think he's an immediate difference maker that accounts for a lot of wins on Saturday in 2025. And it just seems like both of these programs, Oklahoma and Miami, are just lurking in the weeds. And if John,
I know, because they both should obviously be going after quarterbacks. I look at both are no-brainers, should be in the quarterback transfer portal market. I get Emory Williams for Oklahoma. You certainly like what you have, but it's not a super competitive room as it stands right now.
Yeah.
Same goes, frankly, for Oklahoma, where Michael Hawkins is the only guy you really look at and feel particularly decent about maybe moving forward.
We talked about it, I think, Tuesday morning or Thursday morning, and I said, look, I don't think Miami should be going after a guy like Malik Murphy because I don't know if it's that big of an upgrade from a guy like Emory Williams and, going out and giving a lot of resources to someone like Malik Murphy. I'd rather just build around Emory. The conversation changes with John Mateer a little bit because I think he's that guy. So we'll see how it plays out. It's going to be really fun. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.